3 days into what the internet had dubbed the Great HOA uprising, Karen's world began cracking at the seams. The crowd of supporters camped outside her house had swelled to nearly 200 people. Food trucks lined her street, vendors sold Karen-proof yard signs, and someone had erected a portable stage where veterans shared their stories hourly. Karen barricaded herself inside, watching through her blinds as her neighborhood transformed into something unrecognizable. Worse yet, the Sunset Ridge HOA board had called an emergency meeting without her. "They can't remove me as president," she told Doug, pacing their living room like a caged animal. "I've increased property values by 12%. I've eliminated unsightly lawn ornaments. I've created order from chaos." Doug looked up from his laptop, where he'd been reeling the endless stream of articles about his wife. "Karen, honey, they're comparing you to historical dictators on Reddit. Maybe it's time to?" Time to what? Surrender to mob rule? Never. But when Karen opened her laptop to check her emails, she found her HOA president access had been revoked. 43 of the 45 board members had voted for her immediate suspension, pending a community review. The only 2 votes in her favor came from herself and her next-door neighbor, elderly Mrs. Patterson, who voted yes on everything out of confusion. The final blow came in the form of a FaceTime call from Afghanistan. Captain Mitchell himself appeared on her phone screen, exhausted but resolute. "Ma'am, I understand you've been having issues with my property maintenance," he said, the sound of helicopters whirring in the background. "I want to apologize for any inconvenience my service to our country has caused you." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The sarcasm in his voice was so subtle, so perfectly military polite, that she couldn't even argue with it. Behind him, she could see other soldiers watching, their faces a mixture of disbelief and barely contained laughter. I was just enforcing the community standards," she stammered. "Of course you were, ma'am. Tell you what, when I get home, I'll make sure to ask the Taliban if they have any landscaping tips for you." The call ended, leaving Karen staring at her reflection in the black screen. For the first time in her adult life, she felt genuinely small. Outside, the crowd had begun chanting her name, but not in the way she'd always imagined. It wasn't the respectful acknowledgement of her authority she'd craved. It was something else entirely. Something that made her stomach twist with an unfamiliar emotion she refused to name. Karen walked to her front window and pulled back the blinds. Hundreds of faces stared back at her, some angry, some amused, all watching, waiting to see what she'd do next. She let the blinds fall closed and turned to Doug, who was booking flights to his sister's house in Montana. "This isn't over," she whispered, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. In her kitchen, the phone rang again. The caller ID showed a number from Washington, D.C. Karen stared at it, her hand hovering over the answer button, knowing that whatever came next would change everything. But some battles, she was beginning to realize, were unwinnable from the start. Karen Pemberton stood on her perfectly manicured lawn at 6:47 a.m., measuring the height of her neighbor's grass with a ruler. Again, the fact that Captain James Mitchell had deployed overseas 3 weeks ago didn't stop her from documenting every blade that dared exceed the Sunset Ridge HOA's 2 3/4-inch limit. "This is unacceptable," she muttered, photographing a dandelion with the intensity of a crime scene investigator. Her phone buzzed with the latest notification from the neighborhood app. 17 messages about her complaint against the abandoned military property next door. Karen's jaw tightened as she read the responses, calling her heartless and unpatriotic. Didn't these people understand that rules existed for a reason? The breaking point came when she spotted something that made her blood boil. A faded yellow ribbon magnet on Captain Mitchell's mailbox. "Tacky lawn decorations," she declared, whipping out her violation notice pad. Within minutes, she'd slapped a bright orange citation on the mailbox, right next to the "Support Our Troops" ribbon. What Karen didn't notice was Mrs. Chen from across the street, live-streaming the entire incident on her phone. By lunch, the video had 50,000 views. By dinner, it was trending on 3 social media platforms under hashtag HOA Karen's Army. Local news vans started circling Sunset Ridge like vultures, And Karen's phone rang incessantly with interview requests she had no intention of answering. "I don't care if he's serving our country," Karen told her husband Dub that evening, waving her HOA handbook like a weapon. "Rules are rules. If I make exceptions for one person, where does it end? Chaos, Doug. Pure chaos." Doug, who'd been married to Karen for 15 years and recognized the particular gleam in her eye that meant war, simply sipped his beer and wondered if their homeowner's insurance covered national scandals. The next morning brought Karen's first taste of real consequences. She emerged from her house to find her own lawn decorated with hundreds of tiny American flags. Veterans from 3 counties had made pilgrimages to Sunset Ridge overnight, turning her pristine neighborhood into a patriotic fortress. "This is a legal assembly," Karen shrieked at the growing crowd, her voice cracking with indignation. "I'm calling the police." "Ma'am," said a weathered veteran in a wheelchair, his voice gentle but firm, "we're on public property, and we're not going anywhere until you leave that soldier's family alone." Karen's hand trembled as she dialed 911, watching news crews set up camp across from her house. She'd started a war she never intended to fight, but backing down now would mean admitting she was wrong. And Karen Pemberton had never been wrong about anything in her life. The police dispatcher's weary voice came through her phone. "Ma'am, is this about the HOA situation? Because we've gotten 47 calls about this already today."